Good morning. This morning, we are going to walk through a Meristem Minute with Peter Rousonelos. He is the VP of Business Development, and he's truly the expert on how Meristem can help you take cost out. Farmers have big expenses, and so how do we agronomically make great solutions for less cost? So, Peter, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melanie. And as you mentioned, this season, there's some challenges we're coming into. Commodity prices are down some. We're recently seeing an uptick, which is great. But we're at Meristem, we're always about taking cost out and really producing more bushels for less cost. And so with that, we've developed the what we call the four keys, and like to talk a little bit about how we can, impact the grower's bottom line by removing costs, but not taking away yield. And I think that's the key here. We think about cost and we think, how can I produce my acre at less, spending less money? And we look at that, but we don't want to do it by reducing yield. So how do we reduce our amount of input per unit of output? And like to cover the ways that Meristem looks at how to tackle that for the grower. And with that, we'll start here with our corn pail. And one thing that I really get excited about with the corn pail is, in our previous offerings, we have biofertility, we have zinc, we really have a holistic starter offering that every grower can utilize at the planter. And when you think about the value of starter, we know it's of high value. A lot of markets that use it spend a significant amount of money on starter. And so this is a way to bring that value to the farmer in a way that's easy to use with less equipment cost. The thing I want to focus on here is you see GuardX. And as we look at the pail offering, we're able to bring in now biocontrols in addition to the biofertilities. And when we talk about biocontrols, this is where we're truly substituting something that the farmer is spending significant money on to manage. In the case of GuardX, we're managing corn rootworm. And right now, the farmer's options are insecticides that vary anywhere from $10 an acre to $30 an acre, and also or traits that vary anywhere from $15 to $30 an acre. So we can take Guard X now, bring it into the pail, provide this to the farmers in those markets that have corn rootworm pressure, and remove about $20 per acre of cost right out of their program by using GuardX and being able to provide that solution to every farmer. So as you
So,
see,
Peter,
yes.
share exactly what GuardX is.
So GuardX is a microbe that colonizes on the root system, and it basically blocks the signal from the corn rootworm being able to attract to that root. So the corn rootworm doesn't have any eyes; it can't see that root. But so the root exhibits or puts out a signal, if you will, that attracts that corn rootworm. And that's what when that corn rootworm comes to that root, then it feeds on that root. And today, our defense mechanisms for that are we either apply an insecticide that really has a half-life of 3 to 4 weeks, and that's about the most control we're going to get out of it, and we kill the corn rootworm with that, and or a trait where with that trait it has to bite the root to then take in the protein, which then kills that corn rootworm. With Guard X, we actually keep that corn rootworm from ever taking a bite, which means we never get that stress of that plant having to recover from that. So we're cutting off that signal, keeping that corn rootworm from ever finishing its life cycle because it doesn't have anything to feed on.
So when this Guard X is in the pail, we're really looking at an SRP of $29 an acre. And, when you look at all the components that are in that pail, if you were to go buy a liquid starter, buy all the components, you're looking at $76 an acre. So, Peter, what I'm hearing from you is there's really a take cost out of about $47 an acre in this scenario.
That's exactly right. Not every uh, planter is equipped with starter. We know that, but where they are equipped with starter, they're spending anywhere from at minimum $50 an acre to this $76 per acre value if they're really utilizing all the things that are available to maximize their starter system, including again the insecticide for corn rootworm support. What we can do with the pail is we can bring that value to every farmer for this $29 per acre, where we can stack these modes of action and these beneficial components and bring it to every farmer for, if you're a liquid starter farmer today, we can cut your cost in half. And if you are don't have liquid starter today, don't have the ability to deliver these technologies to your seed, we can do it for half the cost that you would have to do it with that you would have to spend if you were going to use liquid starter and deliver these components that way. So we're able to bring a lot of value to the farmer, take costs out with this hopper throttle corn pail.
And we shared a lot about GuardX because we're pretty excited about that. But there is even a take cost out component, even if you don't have the corn rootworm component in the pail. So when we're replacing that zinc, when we're replacing that plant growth regulator, there is that value. So, Peter, we talked about corn, but what about soybeans?
So soybeans, same thing. We get pretty excited about soybeans. We think soybeans are undermanaged. So we are seeing significant yield results out of our soybean hopper throttle offering today. And so our way to really drive costs out of the soybean offering is really to produce more yield for the same cost as what we're spending today with traditional seed treatment. So in this case, most farmers are spending anywhere from 20 to $30 an acre on traditional seed treatment. In this valuation here, we also include there are some farmers that do go in furrow. And so in a perfect world, we would have some fertility in furrow. We would have zinc. We would have a plant growth regulator on top of our traditional seed treatment because just like corn, we know that establishing stands is critical. And a lot of the components that corn benefits from early, soybeans do as well. And we're seeing really good yield responses out of that. So how do we take costs out in this situation? We were able to bring, again, the biocontrols through the planter box, in this case, traditional seed treatment. We're able to bring that in, and the farmer can spend, as we have here in this example, about $25 per acre for our entire offering, which is the traditional seed treatment and all the other biofertility benefits, the biostimulants, the zinc, and the things that we also want to utilize to drive yield. We can do that for about half the cost as if you were to do your industry standard seed treatment and try to do all those things in furrow. So basically, to sum that up, Melanie, what's exciting is if I'm a farmer and I'm going to spend 20 to $30 an acre on a traditional seed treatment, I can take and re-spend that money, not use the traditional seed treatment, buy this planter box, get my traditional seed treatment, plus all the other benefits to drive yield.
Plus all the other benefits, but also get a higher live count of the ingredients that you really need.
That's correct. There's, in this case, inoculant is a great example. Most liquid seed treatments, unfortunately, the inoculant, the CFU count that is delivered to the seed is not, what it starts out as. It's just too harsh of a process. Storing inoculant, putting it through a liquid seed treatment process, and then by the time it actually gets planted, traditionally that CFU count, as we've seen in testing, goes down dramatically, and sometimes, unfortunately, it's not present at all. Where we know we can deliver full CFU count through the planter box.
Now, Peter, we do, we're talking a lot about starter, and we do have a product, UPSHIFT C, that allows us to take cost out. And quite frankly, this is the one I get absolutely the most excited about because in terms, we talk about equal yield, and I've never had equal yield. So we share taking cost out as the win, but performance seems to be a win as well. So share with us about this product, Peter.
Yes, as you mentioned, very exciting product, Melanie. We look at the liquid starter market. Those that, we talked, like you said, the planter box, those that currently use liquid, we do have an option if they want to stay with traditional liquid, is this UPSHIFT C with ether. And you take traditional liquid 1034, there's a few disadvantages. High in salt and is one. As you can see here, we have a 48 versus a 4 salt index with UPSHIFT C, so significantly less salt, less product to handle, and really less cost. So what I like to focus on is why do we use starter? So in all of the market, the reason we're using starter in furrow or even in some 2x2 situations is typically because the soil temperatures are cooler early, and we're just trying to get that plant off to a good start. We just want to get that early phosphorus to give that plant that boost and get off to a good start until that soil warms up and we have phosphorus available for that crop to use. So we're not trying to build soils here. And as we see here, where we've done a bunch of side by sides, 1034-0, a lot of traditional starter versus Upshift C, we're seeing as good of performance. And as you mentioned, in a lot of cases, we're seeing better performance. And we would be happy if we saw as good because we're able to take the cost out versus traditional starter by close to half. We're really cutting the cost in half with this. This is a great solution for the farmer that uses liquid starter that can reduce their cost, maintain the performance that they're getting with their starter, um, and use it, and they're getting what they need out of it, which is just getting that boost of phosphorus early.
My favorite place to use this is in partnership with Hopper Throttle because love driving that zinc in furrow, love getting the phosphorus component here. And like you said, even the combination of those two, I often find is cheaper or less expensive than some of these higher end starter fertilizers. So you can do both of those components for less cost.
You're 100% correct. That is my favorite. That is my favorite program. If you're a liquid starter and we can take and spend, if you're spending $30 an acre on liquid starter and we can get you into Upshift C for half of that, and then you can turn around and take the REVLINE Hopper Throttle corn pail and utilize that as your fluency agent and pick up the zinc and the other components and spend basically about what you're spending on the liquid starter program, that is a winner. That is where we really can provide a lot of value to the farmer that has that liquid in furrow. Um, One thing that we get asked a lot, and we'll spend some time here, is what we call the math. We get customers to say, okay, so I'm going to buy this dry soluble 1258-0, and I'm going to put a half a pound in a gallon of water, and for every time I make that gallon, that replaces 1 gallon of 1034-0. And that is how this product's positioned. And the question we get is, how does that math work? And so let's just walk through it real quick. The Upshift C is a 1258-0. The recommended rate is 2.5 pounds per acre. And where that comes from is traditionally we're running 5 gallons of a 1034-0 based starter fertilizer in furrow in most markets. So as we said, we want a half a pound per gallon of water to replace a gallon of 1034-0. So in this case, we would run 2.5 pounds in 5 gallons of water of our 1258-0. So how much phosphorus are we delivering? Well, 2.5 pounds at 58%, we're delivering 1.45 pounds of available phosphorus. And then we're also delivering a significant load of what we call our ether enzyme technology, which utilizes the phosphatase and mannanase enzymes and really drives phosphorus availability. What I say is we're increasing soluble P because the only thing that matters is soluble phosphorus. That's all the plant can utilize. Pounds of phosphorus don't matter. Soluble phosphorus matters. So how does that compare to traditional starter? 1034-0, 5 gallon rate, 5 gallons. That weighs about 11 and a half pounds a gallon, which gives us in total about 19 pounds of phosphorus. So again, here we have quite a bit more phosphorus in 1034-0, but not much of it's available. Of that, about 35% of that is orthophosphate, and we're only going to get industry standard. Universities will tell you somewhere between 10 and 20%. So if we go with the highest amount, 20%, we're going to get about 1.4 pounds of available P. So when you compare those, running 5 gallons of 1034-0 in furrow, you're going to get about 1.4 pounds of available P to that crop versus Upshift C at 2.5 pounds, you're going to get about 1.45 pounds of available P to that crop. In this case, we're going to deliver the same amount of phosphorus to that crop early that you would with traditional methods, and we're going to bring about the enzymes to help increase soluble phosphorus throughout the growing season. And that matters because when we put on 5 gallons of 1034-0, we're not trying to build soils again. This isn't a build soil conversation. This is about why we use starter, which is getting that crop off to a good start, increasing phosphorus availability early. And what's happening with traditional starters is they tie up, we create antagonism, and we just flood that zone with phosphorus in the hopes that we just get a little bit into that crop. By doing that, we actually create problems, which is why I think we see the yield increases when we do see them against traditional starter because we're not putting such a high salt load in furrow. We're not creating antagonism and tying up other nutrients because we've got so much phosphorus in that band. This is a much balanced approach, lower salt, and we're utilizing enzymes to naturally increase soluble phosphorus.
So, Peter, what I hear is fairly equal numbers, but what we know is it's not equal because we continue to provide more phosphorus over time. And so the math works out that we're very similar, but reality is we're actually not.
That's correct.
So moving forward, there's been one major spend. One of the most expensive things that farmers do is put on fertilizer. And so, how, as we drive these high yields, can we potentially have a better fertility spend?
So one way we can have potential better fertility spend is, what we have out there in the field, there is significant value. And, when we pick a 200 to 300 bushel corn crop, there's 90 pounds of nitrogen, there's 18 pounds of phosphorus, 100 pounds of potassium. That's just in 200 bushel corn. That is out there after we take the crop off. And there's, it is going to mineralize. We are going to get some availability out of that stover that's out there, but we don't know when. We don't know if it's going to come available in June, July. We don't know if it's going to come available in September, October. And if it does come available when the crop doesn't need it as much, then it didn't provide the farmer any value. But the facts are the farmer spent the money on the fertility that is out there in that stover. So one way that we can offset some cost is looking at a holistic approach, utilizing commercial fertilizer. We're not saying don't use it, but look at the fertilizer that's in the field as part of your fertility spend and try to do what you can to mineralize and maximize the availability of the stover, whether you're no-till or whether you're minimal till or whether you're full tillage. We still have a lot of this stover in the upper inches of the soil profile that we can utilize for this upcoming next year's crop. So if we put out fertilizer, we know that fertilizers are very inefficient. We have to put them out there because we have to continue to maintain soil levels. I completely understand that. But we also have to know that when we put out fertilizer, we're only going to capture about 15 to 25% of that fertility applied in that same year. And that's a high number. In a lot of cases, potassium, for example, is going to be anywhere between about 9 and 13% availability. And the phosphorus applied is going to be anywhere from about 10 to 25%. So saying 15 to 25%, again, we're saying there's probably more available than what there really normally is, but we're trying to be very conservative here. And so we take that approach and say, let's marry that with also increasing the nutrient availability that's out there in the stover, utilizing a product called EXCAVATOR AMS. And what we're trying to do is we're wanting to speed up the process in which the nutrients that are out there from last year's crop mineralize and become available to the growing crop. And when we look at the demand for a lot of these nutrients, phosphorus and potassium, especially potassium, what gets me really excited is potassium has a high demand in season. So V8 to VT, right? During reproductive stages, both in corn, soybeans, basically all crops. And it is actually higher than nitrogen when we get to certain levels in some crops. The demand is that high for potassium, and it's no matter how much commercial fertilizer we put on, most markets I travel to, they still see a lack of potassium in season. With Excavator AMS, we're actually seeing that we can take the potassium that's out there in the field, mineralize it quicker, make it available to that crop at a time it needs it, which is in season.
Which means you're also not losing fertility. You're better utilizing what you have in the time you need it and not losing those components.
That's correct. So you're really it's a two-prong approach, right? So you've got if you do utilize some dry fertility, no problem. Everybody's situation is different. We're not saying to deplete your soils. We're saying look at taking some cost out of your fertility. If you're spending $150 an acre as an example on a dry fertility program, consider pulling $50 to $75 of that out and making Excavator AMS part of your fertility program because you're going to better utilize the nutrients that are out there in last year's crop and you can marry that with your dry fertilizer spend if you choose to create a better approach to your fertilizer. As you mentioned, Melanie, the other thing is if we don't do that, the nutrients that do come available in that stover, if the crop doesn't use them, what happens to them? We don't get to keep them. A lot of them either leach away or tie back up. And so they're lost. And so these are dollars that are truly lost that we can help maintain and use for the crop versus waste. And so in this example we have here, things that we can do that we can take costs out if we use excavator AMS. First off, you can take a tillage pass out. We break that residue down to where if you're in a no-till or minimal till situation or have the desire to move that direction, this gives you the ability to do that and get better seed to soil contact. So if we take a tillage pass out, that's worth about $20 an acre anymore. If we do reduce that fertilizer spend, we're saying reduce that by $30 to $50 an acre to offset some of the excavator AMS cost, and because we're going to increase at minimum that much value out of the stover that's in the field. And then with the excavator AMS product, we actually do have a all-in-one built-in water conditioner. So if you're using that product during a fall burn down or during a spring burn down, we actually can substitute out the need for a water conditioner to condition the water for glyphosate. And in
We have
that,
one last area, Peter, to really take a look at in terms of that taking cost out. And so, Meristem has an amazing tool when it comes to nitrogen. And, one thing we talk about in the Meristem world is keeping your nitrogen in an available place where the plant can use it. So share with us why our nitrogen management tools are different than the stabilizers in the market.
yeah, so nitrogen management, we're hearing a lot about this, in a lot of areas in the market, whether it be in nitrogen fixing bacteria or, utilizing nitrogen stabilizers. The way we manage that was we have some of those components available in our offerings that really do help drive additional nitrogen availability. But when we look at how to truly manage our commercial nitrogen, it's all about what the plant can access. And so with competitive nitrogen stabilizers, they don't focus on placement of nitrogen. They focus on killing off soil bacteria that breaks ammonium nitrogen down into nitrate. And when ammonium nitrogen becomes nitrate, it's subject to loss. But the problem is you actually also kill off or reduce that soil biology that is providing beneficial performance because it's increasing nutrient availability and all the kind of things that we've talked about. And also, those competitive products don't do anything to place the nitrogen. So, as you can see in this slide, when you apply nitrogen, that nitrogen is going to do what I call play plinko. It's going to go into that soil profile and it's going to bounce around until it finds an opposite exchange site to attach to. When we utilize Meristem's nitrogen management portfolio with those applications, we how we manage it is we utilize a polymer that helps maintain that nitrogen in the upper inch of the soil profile. So we provide an opposite exchange site, if you will, a synthetic colloid, if you will, that keeps it near the root zone, as you can see in this illustration. It keeps it near the root zone, and if we keep it near the root zone, that means it's just easier for the plant to access, which means the way we manage it is we keep that food source closer to the plant so the plant can take up that nitrogen when it needs it. And if we do that, the beauty of the nitrogen management program within Meristem is we treat the nitrogen, not the acre, so we can use it multiple times. So if you're putting on nitrogen in the fall, and then you're coming back in the spring, or you're coming back side dress, because we treat the nitrogen, the cost for the farmer is varies based on the rate of nitrogen they use. It's not just a set cost, so the farmer doesn't have to pick the highest nitrogen application to use a nitrogen stabilizer. They can use a nitrogen management product for every application. And if we do that, as you can see here over to the side of the slide, it says plus 10%. What we mean by that is we are very confident that you can reduce your nitrogen by 10%. So if you're putting on 200 pounds of nitrogen, for example, in a traditional application across 2 or 3 applications, and you're not using a stabilizer, if you're going to do that with our portfolio, we are very confident that you could pull back up to 10% of your nitrogen to offset the cost of the nitrogen management product and and more, still maintain that nitrogen in the upper inch of soil profile and drive increased yield.
Excellent, Peter. We've talked about all kinds of keys that Meristem offers to take cost out. And so, what a timely message, especially with where commodity prices are now and the value of, we still have to make bushels. And so, agronomically, these are great tools, great ways to take cost out and not hurt your yield. So, thank you, Peter. With that, that is your Meristem Minute.